We've been talking a lot about this up in Collingwood, and you may know that there was a private school up there that pulled the Wi-Fi out this month because of health concerns for kids. And the reason is we were at a kindergarten tea, you know, the cutest thing in the world. And my wife said, "Oh my God, I'm getting this headache like I do whenever you're on your cell phone in the car. Now I'm getting nauseous, now I think I'm going to faint." And she asked the principal, "Do you guys have Wi-Fi in this school?" And she said, "Yeah, there's a transmitter right above your head." And she said, "Geez, I think I'm reacting to it." It was a severe reaction. And she said, "You know, do they need this in the kindergarten class?" She said, "No." "Do they need it in the grade 1 to 2? Oh, she said, "There are 9 computers in the grade 8. And other than that, they're not using it in the school." So she said, "We could actually turn off 8 of these 9 transmitters." And I said, "Boy, that would make a big difference, you know." And then it all made sense. It was all logical. They were going to do that. And then the school board got involved because they had the switch. And they said, "No, we will not turn off those transmitters." They sent us a letter and said, "You're welcome to work this out at your own school." And they secretly sent another email to the principal saying, "Do not do business with these people. Do not turn off the Wi-Fi." And we thought, well, that's really odd for them to be behaving in this duplicitous way. And we talked to other parents about it, and they said, "Well, you know, what could the symptoms be?" And we said, "Well, you know, we've read nausea, headaches, vertigo, dizziness, or skin rashes, rapid racing heart." And they're, one by one, they would go slack-jawed and say, "You've just explained the last 18 months of my life. We've first had to put them at the front of the class and then the back of the class because their eyes were always blurry and they were getting headaches. We went to the eye doctor, their eyes are perfect. We went to the neurologist, they checked out. They had an MRI, they're okay. Now they've been on a heart monitor." There were 4 kids in our school wearing 24-hour heart monitors to school. There were kids who were coming home with headaches every day and taking 3 and 4 ibuprofen or Tylenol or Advil. And their mothers, you know, one of the mothers was a nurse and saying, "This isn't normal among a 13-year-old girl and a 12-year-old girl to be having, 60, 80, 90 days in a row a headache after school," but not on the weekends, not in summer holidays, not in Christmas holidays. And we went to the school board and we went through all the channels for almost 2 years now, where we delegated to them and parents went to them and said, "Listen, my kid's been getting sick, you know, could you maybe back off a little on the Wi-Fi?" And this was only one school. Could we pay to have those 9 computers hardwired? One of the parents ran a alarm company, and he said, "I can just, you know, run the wire into those 9 computers in an hour." He already had a clearance of the school board for his workers to go into school because he does work with the school board. They said, "No, you may not do that." So we thought, well, you know, let's send a health survey out and find out how many other kids might be having these symptoms, because we know of about maybe 12 or 15. And they said, "You may not send a health survey home to find out if more children are sick from this." We said, "Well, then could we have Dr. Havis come to the school and talk about it?" They said, "She may not set foot on this school property if her intention is to talk about the negative effects of microwave radiation on children." And so we were talking about this stuff in school council every month. And when we went to send the approved minutes home with the kids in the backpack so all the moms and dads could read them, they went into the approved minutes and they first deleted all references to Wi-Fi discussion and then sent it home as though it were fact, tampering with the minutes. And then some of the parents said to the superintendent, "You know, why won't you listen to us? What's the difference between what's happening here and the emergence of peanut allergies during the 90s? Or what we now have in our school, ginger allergies and egg allergies." And they said, "The difference is those kids have a doctor's note, and none of you people have a doctor's note." He sort of challenged us. And we challenged him back. "What will you do if we produce a doctor's note?" I said, "We'll shut it off, just like we do for the kids with the peanuts. All students will compromise for the safety of one." So I took my son to an environmental health specialist named Dr. Zoltan Rona, who's well known in a lot of communities. He's an author of a dozen books. He's the editor of the Encyclopedia of Natural Medicine. He's a renowned medical doctor internationally. And he, after his examination, he said, I'm convinced, you know, and from what he read about it, he said, "I've also cured my wife's migraines, by the way, by shutting off the Wi-Fi at home in the interim." And he wrote a note saying, "Do not expose this child to Wi-Fi at school or it will cause him irreparable harm." And 9 months later, they've still done nothing. They didn't do anything. They say, well, we would like to examine Dr. Rona's competence. We would like to hire an independent medical examiner to challenge him on this diagnosis. We would like you to sign over all your privacy to your child's medical records. They started referring to him as disabled. This kid was identified with 134 IQ and put in an intellectually gifted class, and they're calling him a disabled kid, that he can't, because nothing really that bad happens to him. His ears go super hot red, his cheeks get red, and he's a maniac, like he hasn't eaten in 20 hours when he comes home from school every day. And when he's not at school, he's normal and healthy, and his ears don't get red. When he's on the computer for too long, his ears go a little red, but when the Wi-Fi is present, it's a really severe symptom. So we know that he's sensitive somewhat. And once we read the science that says the blood-brain barrier is permeated within something like 8 hours and made thinner forever, how can we send him back into the school? So we've been keeping him home. And the reason I came here tonight is to let you know that there's nothing so special out there in Collingwood. It's just that we happen to figure it out. And we know that this is happening throughout every school where they put Wi-Fi in. We started to hone in on this problem with the kids wearing heart monitors to school. How normal, how many people know somebody like an 8 to 12-year-old who walks around with a 24-hour heart monitor on? Have you ever seen that? That was 4 kids in our school in 1 year. And then we found out that a kid dropped dead of cardiac arrest at a Barrie High School in October. And they managed to get on him and give him CPR and fly him to sick kids and implant a defibrillator in his chest. So he lived. And we were trying to find out the kid's name so we could go and ask the parents if it was, was this in your family? Did he already have a condition? Do you know, could this be Wi-Fi related because of all the heart problems in our school? And we were told that the school board was not releasing his name. They were being very secretive. But the reporter said, he'll come back to school one day and there will be a hero day for the teacher and they'll name him then. And I said, well, how do you know that's going to happen? They said, well, that's what they did when the other kid dropped dead of a heart failure 4 months ago at another school. He was 12. And he was dead and cold on the ground at the school near Penetang. And the first responders were the police, and they had a defibrillator in the car, and they shocked his heart back pumping again, and they flew him to sick kids, and he got a pacemaker installed in his chest, and he's alive. We did a little more digging, and we found out that there were actually 2 kids, an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old, a little girl and a little boy, who actually didn't get revived, who dropped dead in school, in the gymnasium, after Wi-Fi was installed. And these things happen, oh my God, that happened, and then it happened again. And it's all in isolation. But when you start to put it together, and I worked with Dr. Havis, and she came up with some studies in the States and looked at the numbers, because it actually is a growing phenomenon of adolescent cardiac arrest. Go home and Google cardiac arrest basketball, and look how many kids are dropping on the basketball courts of America. There was one school in Chicago where 2 kids in 1 year died in a wrestling match in the same gym in different times. This is within the last 6-8 months. So this stuff is happening now, and it's becoming the new norm. And you have to really, if you're here tonight, you probably care about it enough to want to do something about it. A gift has been handed to all of us who care about this, and the World Health Organization on the 31st of May declared Wi-Fi, all radio frequency radiation, to be a possible carcinogen. That means they've looked at enough evidence that enough people got cancer from using cell phones on the exact part of their head where that's where the tumor was. And they also, by the way, looked at Wi-Fi. They looked at what the 2.4 gigahertz, which is the frequency it travels on, and Dr. House will explain more about that. But they said, yes, this is a possible carcinogen, and they put it on a classification list, 2B. Class A means it's a definite carcinogen. Class 2 means it's probable or possible. A is a probable. B is a possible. So this is like its first entry onto the list. So it always comes in as possible. But now, how can they say that school is mandatory and attendance is mandatory for kids in a place where a class 2B possible carcinogen is radiating 100% of their time inside? They came and measured it at our school in hopes that it would be low, and they actually exceeded Health Canada's safety limit for human exposure on the very first measurement by 34%. They told nobody. They did not warn the teachers. The consultant's report says if you touch, the consultant was a friendly, right? So he was friendly to the board. And he was trying to dismiss it or downplay his findings. And he said, well, the child would have to touch the laptop in a significant way for more than about 4.5 minutes in order to be irradiated beyond Health Canada's safety level. So 4.5 minutes, a pretty normal amount of time. It's probably short. So they have this information and they're sitting on it. They buried it. They didn't warn anybody. I think by law, under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, they have to tell the teachers. They haven't done that. So they used to say, we go by the World Health Organization. Until the World Health Organization said it might give you cancer, they say, well, we don't listen to them anymore. Now we listen to these criminals over here who are lying about it, right? Like Arlene King, the Chief Medical Officer of Health of Ontario, who I think should have her medical license revoked for ignoring the warning of the World Health Organization and actually saying fraudulently that Wi-Fi is safe, when in fact, nobody can make that claim. So what we're up against is, if you go tell your principal, nothing happens. If you go tell your friends, nothing happens. You have to write a letter to the principal, the school board, all the way up the line, and say, hand deliver it like it's a court document, and say that Wi-Fi has been declared a Class 2B possible carcinogen. I do not consent to my child being exposed to this. I have the right to prevent cancer in my child. I have the right to education in my child. You do not have the right to say that I am not allowed to prevent cancer in my child by heeding a warning from the World Health Organization. And the funny thing is, it's so dead easy to turn this thing off. This little system they're going to show you, this is $89 at Staples, and what it does is it turns every electrical, I could put one in here now, and it would turn every electrical outlet in this entire building into a high-speed internet connection. And it's working in a school in Collingwood right now, and the kids are saying, wow, it's way faster than Wi-Fi. And there's no radiation from it. So it's so easy to do. This is at Staples and Walmart and Future Shop and Best Buy, and you know, it's ridiculously easy to do. And they have no excuse, and they have no right to expose our children to this when the evidence is so overwhelmingly powerful and the warnings are coming from the World Health Organization. So I just wanted to prime you with that, and I wanted to show you a little video if I could. Maggie, you've got it. She's so fast with this stuff. These are kids and parents from my school. We showed this to the school board.
Hi, I'm Austin Lamont, and I'm 14 years old. I go to Mountain View School. I've been suffering weird headaches and dizziness and displacement. Like, it feels like my head is, like there's a lot of pressure in my head and it's like repulsing like this. And I just feel like displaced, and when I'm not there, nothing happens, so. And like, I get really like weak. And like it's hard to hold a pencil too, and I can't think straight.
Starting this year at Mountain View, I've been getting a lot of headaches, and it's been making me really dizzy, and like it feels like I can't concentrate, and you feel like you're not really there. It's hard to explain.
The thing that would concern us was that she always got better when she got home, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. We got her eyes checked and found out that wasn't it, and actually had everything checked and found out that wasn't it. And she's still, to this day, when she goes to class, probably about 4 out of the 5 days that she's there, she's coming home with a headache. And I mean significant headache where she has to take Tylenol or Advil.
There was more to it, but it goes on like that with more parents and more students. And we showed it all to the school board, and they just ignored it. They didn't investigate it. They pretended it didn't happen. When parents in Peterborough got wind of this, a number of them teachers didn't want to be working in it all the time. They took it to the school board. Again, Dr. Havis came this time, and she spoke to them and gave them all the science. The Royal Society of Canada's showed that it permeates the blood-brain barrier after only a few hours, and that can never change. And what that is, by the way, is that's the thing that God put there to keep your brain fluid out of your bloodstream and your bloodstream out of your brain fluid. And that gets thinner when you're exposed to this stuff, and it never thickens again. And the school board in Peterborough responded by trying to hide the transmitters in the ceiling tiles so that nobody knew that they were being exposed to the microwave radiation from the Wi-Fi. And So now they're being denied their basic right to know that they're being exposed to a Class 2B carcinogen. So this is how school boards are behaving and will behave more than likely en masse, with the exception of one. In Saanich, British Columbia, which is on Vancouver Island, which is a rural school district, they actually banned Wi-Fi in April of this year in all of their elementary schools. Now the critics will say they didn't go far enough, but they did something. And they didn't do it in the high schools, but they did it in the elementary schools, recognizing that the younger a child is, the smaller their body is, so that if I get exposed to the same radiation as my little daughter, it's the same amount of radiation in that tiny little body. And moreover, her little bones are not nearly as dense as mine. So it gets into the marrow, it gets into the brain, it gets into the organs. Much, much more in the kids than it does in the adults. So this is why parents are the ones coming to tell you this, and not the Health Canada types, who, by the way, belong to a government that make billions of dollars off this industry. So they have a profound conflict of interest. Parents are coming because they took extremely powerful Wi-Fi systems, enough to charge about 300 or 400 computers, and they put them in a school with the most vulnerable of society, the tiny little kids, and they expose them all day long. So you've got a perfect storm here. And within that storm, there are other little storms, like the kid with the undiagnosed heart abnormality, who may have died at 95 and never known that he had some supraventricular tachycardia or Wolff-Parkinson's White or any of these diseases that occur in, or abnormalities that occur in the hearts of about 20% of humans. But they can get triggered to the point of death. They can get triggered to the point where we've had kids taken out of our school where their mothers say their heart's pounding so much they can see it through the shirt. And the kid goes white and he can't talk, and he grabs mom's hand and he puts it to the chest, and the mom more or less evacuates the kid. And this is the new normal. 100% of the schools in Simcoe County now have defibrillators. This is the new normal. York Region, as I understand it, was an early adopter. I don't know much about this, only a little, but it was an early adopter with Simcoe. I was having a conversation with a teacher from York Region, and she just said, oh, there was a kid died in my school. I don't know if anybody heard about this. It was in the local news. I think it was in the last year or so. Kids don't die at school, except now they do. They're not dropping en masse, but little ones here and there are the canaries in the coal mine. And the big danger, frankly, is the ones who show no symptom, because those are the ones who can handle the 15-year exposure, and those are the ones that get bumped up to the high on the list of cancer risk, according to the World Health Organization. So I worked as a journalist for 20 years before I retired up to Collingwood. And I was a foreign correspondent with CTV News. I held bureaus in Jerusalem, in New Delhi, in Beijing. I was an investigative reporter for CBC Radio, for CBC Television. And I used to find stories like this and really go for it, you know, and expose it. I retired from all that, and then I went up to Collingwood, where it was going to be a lot sleepier for me, not so many terrorists and gunshots. And I wind up in the middle of what I think is the biggest story affecting our society today: the irradiation of a generation of Canadian children. And it's not going to stop because the government's going to realize they're wrong and we're right. It's only going to stop because meetings like this go out, and if every one of you get 10 more people and you start writing those letters that say, quite rightfully, I don't consent to my child being exposed to a Class 2B carcinogen in school. Stop it tomorrow and keep them home. I kept my kids home for a year, and then this private school took them out and we put them in. But I still want them to have their public school back. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Havis now, who I should point out, if you haven't heard of her, she talks a lot about this because she teaches about it. She's one of the few professors in all of Canada who actually teach courses on this, on the effects of electrical radiation, and not just Wi-Fi in schools. It's a small part of her knowledge base on this. She lectures internationally. She's in demand among medical doctors. I have seen her hold the attention of a room of the top leading edge medical doctors in North America, all listening to what she has to say about this quite attentively and taking notes. A lot of the push in the medical profession is coming from doctors who got sick, because they can't, their training didn't train them to think they were right about this until they get sick themselves, and none of their medicine can make them well again, and then they come on side. Dr. Havis has a long career of figuring stuff out before the rest of us. She figured out acid rain in the early 70s and went to the high Arctic to prove with natural sulfuric vents that affect the clouds and get into the entire water cycle that there will be entire vegetative and animal destruction if you continue acid rain down here in southern Ontario. And the science that she published eventually led to international legislation by the US and Canada under Mulroney and Reagan to stop acid rain and curb pollution for all of North America. So she's used to waiting, you know, 10 years until we all figure it out. But in this case, I'm not so patient because my kids are affected and all of your kids are affected. And she's, here she is now to tell us about what she knows about